I never thought a simple act of kindness would ruin my life. That day had started like every other. Stale coffee in a paper cup, a quick shuttle ride across the docking ring, and the endless grind of maintenance reports that no one bothered to read. I was a maintenance engineer, one of the invisible people who kept the station breathing, who patched the oxygen scrubbers, tightened coolant seals, and cleaned the grease from systems that had been running longer than I'd been alive. The kind of job that was only noticed when something failed. I didn't mind. I liked the quiet hum of machinery better than the noise of boardrooms anyway. That's when I saw her. She was hunched over near one of the loading bays, scales dulled with age, her ridges chipped and worn down. A sci-fi grandmother. She looked fragile, like she had been left behind by time itself. She was trying to drag a hovercart with one wheel jammed, bags stacked so high they threatened to topple. People streamed past her, traders, officers, humans and aliens alike, but no one stopped. Most didn't even look. Some smirked, like her struggle was an inconvenience in their perfect schedules. I couldn't ignore her. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe I just wasn't built to walk past someone who needed help. I crossed the bay, fixed the hovercart with a flick of my toolkit, and carried her crates to the docking ramp. She looked up at me with eyes that shimmered like old glass, and in her broken English she whispered, "Thank you." I barely made it back to my post before security grabbed me. They said I'd violated interspecies protocol. Unauthorized interference with non-human property, they called it. By the end of the shift, my badge was revoked, my career stripped away. Fired, for helping a grandmother. With no badge and no clearance, the station turned cold on me fast. Doors that once opened at my touch were locked. Colleagues I'd shared coffee with wouldn't meet my eyes. To them, I wasn't just unemployed, I was contaminated. Someone who had broken protocol and been cast out. The corporate world didn't need rebels, and by helping that sci-fi grandmother, I'd branded myself as one. I drifted to the lower sectors, the places where neon lights flickered against cracked steel and the smell of burned oil never faded. Down there, you found the forgotten, the discharged soldiers with missing limbs, the engineers who couldn't keep up, and aliens who didn't fit neatly into corporate categories. Everyone carried the same look in their eyes, the quiet knowledge that the system had no place for them anymore. I spent nights walking aimlessly through those tunnels, bitterness gnawing at me. Humanity had clawed its way into the stars, built cities in orbit, conquered gravity itself, and yet we'd lost something vital. Compassion, dignity. People were numbers on a screen, assets to be managed or discarded. I kept replaying the moment over and over, her fragile hands clutching her cart, the way everyone looked past her like she wasn't even alive. And for daring to see her as a person, I'd been punished. One evening, hunger drove me to the market tunnels where old vendors sold scraps and stale food. That's when I saw her again, the grandmother. She was thinner now, her scales flaking, but she wasn't alone. 3 small younglings clung to her legs, their eyes wide with fear and hunger. When she noticed me, her face softened. She shuffled forward, pressed something small into my palm, a crystal that hummed with warmth. "For you," she whispered, voice shaking, "because you saw me." I didn't understand then, but that crystal would change everything. Back in the rusted cargo container I was calling home, I turned the crystal over in my hand, trying to figure out what it was. It was no bigger than my thumb, facete like glass, but inside it shimmered as if stars themselves were trapped within. The moment I tightened my grip, my neural implant flickered to life. At first, I thought it was malfunctioning, but then streams of symbols spilled across my vision, alien schematics, maps, codes. My implant translated words I'd never seen before, unraveling languages that had no business existing in my brain. I dropped the crystal, heart racing. It clattered against the metal floor, but the images didn't vanish. They were in me now, alive, threading into my thoughts like they had always belonged there. I saw designs for machines I couldn't name, engines that bent light, weapons that made human technology look like toys, and something stranger still, a device that looked like a compass, pointing to a location far beyond the station's boundaries. I told myself it was impossible, that I was hallucinating. But my hands moved on their own, following blueprints etched into my mind. I scavenged through junkyards, welded through the night, and by dawn I had built it, the compass. A small, humming device, its needle locked firmly toward the void. Not north, not any coordinate I knew. Somewhere out there, in the deep black, it wanted me to go. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. At first, I thought it was paranoia. But soon I caught glimpses of men in dark armor lingering in the markets, ships with no registration codes shadowing the station's docks. The kind of people who didn't ask questions, they took what they wanted. And now, they were hunting me. Because of the crystal. Because of what it unlocked. The compass wouldn't stop humming. No matter where I turned it, no matter how far I walked through the station, its needle stayed locked, tugging me toward the stars. The longer I held it, the stronger the pull became, like it was whispering inside my skull. Asterisk go. 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 Asterisk staying on the station wasn't an option anymore, not with the black armored men closing in. I knew if they caught me, I'd disappear into some corporate lab, dissected for whatever secrets the crystal had poured into my mind. So I stole the shuttle. It wasn't much, an old cargo hauler, half its systems red-tagged for decommissioning. The engine sputtered, and the guidance array was held together with more tape than tech, but it flew. The alarm screamed as I broke dock without clearance, but by the time station patrols scrambled, I was already burning hard into open space. Days bled together in the void. I rationed stale protein packs, recycled every drop of water, and tried not to think about how thin the hull was between me and death. The compass glowed steadily, guiding me deeper, past the edge of mapped routes, into territory so empty it was like the galaxy had forgotten it. I began to wonder if I'd gone insane, chasing after a rock given to me by a stranger. Then I saw it. Out of the black, a shape materialized, massive, silent, older than anything I'd ever laid eyes on. A ship, but not like any human vessel. Its hull was carved with flowing sci-fi runes, faintly glowing as though remembering old power. It was a giant slumbering in the dark, waiting. As I drifted closer, the compass pulsed brighter. The ship's airlock opened with a groan, unbidden, like it had been expecting me. And against all reason, I stepped inside. The air inside was thin, stale, but breathable. My footsteps echoed through corridors that seemed more like cathedrals than hallways, arched ceilings etched with glowing runes, walls that pulsed faintly as though alive. The ship wasn't dead. It was sleeping, and my presence had stirred it. As I explored, fragments of light flickered to life. Holograms shimmered in the air, towering sci-fi warriors, their armor shining like starlight, their voices carrying in a language I shouldn't have understood but somehow did. I saw battles, armadas colliding in fire and steel, worlds burning, cities falling to shadows that weren't ships but something was. Their empire had faced an enemy vast and merciless. They fought until they had nothing left, until they buried this ship in silence, a final ember waiting to be found. And now that ember was in my hands. At the heart of the vessel was a chamber unlike any I'd seen, lined with conduits that throbbed like veins. In the center floated a crystalline cradle. My crystal slid into it, as though it had been waiting all along. When it locked into place, the ship shuddered, and lights blazed awake. The floor beneath me vibrated with power older than human civilization. Panels lit up around me, revealing weapons I couldn't begin to comprehend. Beams that bent space, cannons that could carve through fleets, engines that folded the void like paper. This ship wasn't just old. It was a fortress, a last hope crafted in desperation. And the sci-fi grandmother had chosen me, a washed-up engineer, to carry it. But I wasn't the only one who knew. Warnings flared across the consoles. Ships were closing in. The black-armored hunters had followed me across the void. Their demands crackled over the comms. Surrender the vessel. They thought I was just a man who got lucky. They had no idea what I was about to unleash. They came out of warp in a spearhead formation, sleek black corvettes bristling with guns, their hulls marked with the insignia of corporate privateers. Predators, sent to strip me of the ship and whatever secrets it held. Their comms bled, demanding surrender, promising a merciful detainment if I complied. My hands shook as I stared at the controls. I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't trained for battle. But the ship seemed to know better. The consoles lit up, symbols rearranging into words my mind could grasp. Weapon systems armed themselves. Targeting reticles blossomed across the display. I didn't even touch the trigger. The ship felt my fear, my determination, and it moved with me. When the first corvette fired, the sci-fi vessel shifted, space itself bending as the shot slid harmlessly past. Then came my answer. A single lance of light tore through the void. One corvette erupted, scattering into molten fragments. The others faltered, regrouped, then swarmed in from all angles. Missiles streaked past. I felt heat ripple through the hull. My pulse thundered. But every time I thought the end was near, the ship danced, folding around their fire, responding to instinct more than calculation. I stopped thinking like an engineer. I stopped worrying about protocols and numbers. I fought like a human who refused to bow. I told the ship where to strike, and it answered with fury. Beams split hulls, torpedoes detonated in blossoms of fire, and in less than an hour, the predators were reduced to drifting wrecks. As the last ship limped away, comms filled with static, I sat in the command chair drenched in sweat, my breath ragged. I hadn't just survived. I'd fought them off. And in that moment, one truth settled heavy in my chest. This wasn't just survival. It was the beginning of war. The wreckage of the battle still floated outside, glowing embers against the endless black. I should have felt victorious, but instead there was only silence pressing in on me, heavy and unrelenting. My hands trembled as they rested on the controls. I was no soldier, no chosen hero. I was just a man who had been cast aside, someone who once fixed pipes and scrubbers for a living. Yet somehow, this ship had accepted me. Somehow, I had survived. The vessel hummed beneath my feet, alive in ways I couldn't explain. Its lights pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, as if asking what came next. Riches, power, revenge, all of it lay within reach. I could imagine Earth's corporations tearing each other apart for even a fraction of this technology. I could imagine entire fleets kneeling if I chose to wield the ship's weapons like a tyrant. But then her face rose in my mind, the grandmother, fragile and worn, yet still strong enough to give a stranger hope. Her younglings' wide eyes, their hunger, their fear. She had trusted me with something priceless, not because I was powerful, but because I was human enough to stop, to care. The thought tightened my chest. Maybe that was the point. The sci-fi hadn't built this vessel for conquest. It was meant to be a sanctuary, a chance at survival, a seed for a future they'd never see. And they had left it not for an empire, but for someone who would choose to protect instead of exploit. I placed my hand on the crystal, feeling its warmth spread through me. "I'll honor it," I whispered. The ship answered with a low, resonant hum, like a vow sealed in steel and starlight. Fate hadn't given me a weapon. It had given me a responsibility, and I would not waste it.